Okay, guys, we're live. We're going to be joined by Nav Sekhon. So just we're waiting for him to join. Let's get the show on the road here. How you guys doing? Oh,
Hey,
there
Rob.
you go, the man of the hour, the one that we've been waiting for. So,
What
guys,
happened?
before we get started here, how's it going, Nav?
Good, man. I actually went like I haven't done this before.
So, guys, before we get started with this live today, I need to introduce this guy. I know a lot of you guys know. Nav Sekhon, guys, is one of the top real estate agents in the mainland Fraser Valley. I've known him personally for years. And when it comes to work ethic and knowledge about farms, I don't think there's anyone else that knows about farms as much as Nav. Um,
Thank you for the intro.
Nav, um, tell us a little bit about your history first, before like how you got into farms and in general, like before selling farms, you've been in the farm industry. So
Oh
get
yeah.
started there.
So my family, they've been farming since like late 70s, early 80s. So I pretty much was born and raised into the farming business. So our family, we do blueberries, and so as a kid, you're on the farm, playing there every summer, still working till even now for free, not getting paid for it. How it
Oh
is for
man.
family businesses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my background has always been in farming. So in 2007, I got my real estate license. My dad was also in real estate as well. So he was also doing agriculture real estate at that time as well. So he did a lot of residential, farm real estate, commercial development. So when I got my license, ideally, I didn't even think about joining any or doing any farm real estate. I wanted to do kind of what every realtor does, is sell a bunch of homes and development properties.
Yeah.
But after trying a lot of the residential stuff, I realized I didn't really like it. So I did a few farm deals, and I realized I got a passion for this thing. I've got an eye for this. So
Mm-hmm.
then I predominantly just focused 100% of my business on agriculture real estate. So we pretty much like to touch anything that's within the ALR. We don't do any houses. We don't do any condos. We don't do any development land. Um, one,
So when they say farms is your specialty, you really mean
yeah,
farm. You're the man for farms. You don't mess around. That's what you do.
yeah,
Um, so bringing it back to the current real estate market,
yeah,
I know on our side, you know how it was an amazing seller's market. There was no product, low interest rates. The prices peaked in January, February, and
yeah,
then now there's a lot more inventory,
yeah,
and interest rates are definitely affecting the prices, and prices are starting to come down. Um,
yeah.
I know
Or-
in the few years they will go up again, but for the short term, they're getting affected. But
It,
regarding farms, um, how is it currently affecting you guys out there right
it,
now?
it's almost it piggybacks off the residential market.
Mm-hmm.
We see a trickle right after. So when the market's going up on the residential side, we typically see it a few months after on the farm side. So we saw that when the market was going up. Same thing with on the downturn here, where we're starting to see prices get corrected. It almost mimics the residential market.
Okay.
Um, the prices are going to be corrected. I think at this point we're at probably November or December of 2021 pricing.
Okay.
And it's mostly the smaller acreages that got affected.
Okay.
Anything under 15 acres, I believe there will be a correction. But some of the bigger stuff, 15, 20, 30, 40 plus acres, there's not much inventory. There never was. We've got a lot of buyers for a lot of that bigger stuff, and it's just hard to find. So that pricing is staying strong. But at the same time,
Yeah.
that same inventory, the prices never increased as aggressively as the 5, 10 acre hobby farm where, somebody was debating, should I buy an 8 lot, or should I go buy a 5-acre farm and just build my house and have some land and I can do some farming, right?
So I
So
know, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I know a lot of guys in the
yeah,
residential market, their dream is to own a dream, you know, their dream is like, I want the large farmhouse. You
yeah,
probably got a couple of these, but
yeah.
the
But
large farmhouse,
that
five
that, that
acres around a blueberry.
yeah,
And that's I think a common product for a lot of guys. That's a dream. Or they own a trucking company, they park a couple of trucks there,
yeah,
and I think that's the one you're seeing more get affected because that's more of
yes.
a resident, even though it's a farm, it's more of a residential.
Yeah, we call it more of a hobby farm. So
Got it.
they might have a dad, they want to do some sort of agriculture side, smaller scale business. But yeah, their primary focus is to buy it to build a house. Now, you did mention that big house, and you are capped now. Since of 2019, you're capped at 5,400 square feet.
That's another thing I was going to ask you about.
Yeah,
There was some legislation passed before their houses that are like 10,000 square feet, massive
yeah,
mansions. You
yeah,
drive down 152 Street in Surrey or
yeah,
168. I see these massive homes and I'm like, man, this is
yeah.
amazing. So what's the deal with that? What happened there? Like, I know out there, there's a bunch of people, my sister included, she wants a farmhouse. So
Yeah.
if you don't mind explaining, yeah.
So previous to 2019, there wasn't really a cap on house size. You were limited to build, actually, some acreages in some municipalities, you were allowed to build 2 homes. So I believe, Surrey, if you were over 10 acres, you could build 2 houses. Langley, if you were over 20 acres, you could build 2 houses. Abbotsford, I think it was 10 acres as well, you can build 2 houses. 2019 rolled around, and when the NDP government came in, they really wanted to put a cap on wastage of farmland for these residences. So what they
Mm-hmm.
did was they limited the house size to 5,400 square feet on 2 floors. Now, if you're out of the floodplain, where you're above sea level, you can potentially build a basement suite. So you can still, in some areas, expand up to a 7,400 square foot house, depending
Okay.
on where you are. Like you'll see in a lot of Abbotsford, Abbotsford, Langley, you'll get that 3-story just because you're out of floodplain.
Okay.
But dominantly Richmond, Delta, Surrey, you're only going to be able to build at 5,400.
And just to clarify, this isn't like a municipality law. This is a provincial.
Provincial, they blanketed that rule all across BC. Now, that being said, fast forward 2022, they are starting to get a little bit lenient for legitimate farmers that are generational. You have mom and dad that started the farm. There's families that own 20, 40, 100 acres,
Yeah.
and one house is just not going to be suffice for potentially 2 other sons, or one
Yeah.
son that wants to live on the farm and still do the farming business. They have been giving those exemptions for the second house. We
Oh,
have seen some cases where they're starting to relax that situation for a lot of these farmers, which is good. Like, they came in pretty hard. They put down this,
yes.
but now we're starting to see them being a little bit more flexible, for as long as you can prove that.
I think it's just being, if you're a genuine guy that you have a
Yeah,
large family, you need bigger houses, right?
yeah,
As
and
long
I
as,
think,
if you got 100 acres there, right?
yeah.
And before we get any further, guys, I need some fire emojis if you want a dream house that's in a farm right now. So who wants a dream house on fire? We need to let Nav know how important this is.
Oh, you
um,
get like 7, 8 calls a day. Done. And then it's insane how many calls we get in at our office, just for a hobby farm. And, in the scale of things is inventory so quite low.
hello.
Like Surrey, Delta, Richmond, inventory is quite low. What we've seen recently here in the last 60 days to 90 days is that the inventory in Langley has spiked significantly. So,
So inventory in Langley, you're noticing quite a. So
yep,
the prices you're gonna probably see a little bit
we,
more. It
we've
might be a good time to get in. Do you think?
I think if you're a buyer for Langley, you're not going to find a better time than right now. Abbotsford is still quite low in inventory. I know there's some farms that are for sale, but on an average over the last 5 years, it's at an all-time low still.
Okay.
So but Langley's been one of those areas where there's just tons of inventory. I'm looking on MLS every day, and there's about 2 listings that come on daily.
Wow.
So there's
Wow,
plenty of inventory. You can negotiate a lot harder, and not a lot of these farmers as well, or these people that own these acreages. A lot of them are financially well off. They're not highly debted, where they're going to have to do these fire sales. And what we have also been noticing, that yes, some people would like to sell, and some of these people are just taking it off the market. They'll say, you know what, we'll wait the 2-3 years.
Got it.
Yeah.
So they don't need to sell. They're wanting to sell, but they still want the right price. So you're saying the farm market is a little bit more stable at the moment, and the difference that you notice, from what I understand, is the more of the residential hobby style farms. Those are the ones that are maybe you could get into, but the larger commercial, that farming is more of a business, like the 15 plus acres, that's been relatively the same and not much of a difference. That's more of at that point you're a business.
Yeah, well, at that point you're a true farmer. You've got a business plan in place. It's in those that inventory is still hard to find. 20 plus acres. Heck, there's not many blueberry farms on the market, bigger ones. We're not seeing many big bare land pieces. I know the greenhouse industry, they're going very aggressive to buy land. There's not good pieces out there for sale that are available. So it's tough finding this inventory as well, right?
And regarding like building and just financing, are farms different than residential? Because from my understanding, there's little differences, no?
Well, yeah, I think if you're over 5 acres, or 10 acres, that each institution has their own scale. But I believe if you're on an average over 5 acres, and you're declaring the farming income, any potential income off that farm, you'll fall in that commercial classification. We are still running into that same problem where, as like you are on the residential side, you're not getting many the appraisals coming to purchase price. So
that's a big issue right now that we're facing as well. Major issue. Yeah.
On the commercial end, we always prepare buyers to put down 35 to 40%.
Okay, the expectation should be 30 to 40. A higher down payment should be expected when you're looking into farms.
Yeah. Then if you're under 5 acres, you'll fall within that residential category. I think now some of the appraisals are coming to par with price adjustments, and for that you should expect as low as 20%. But keep in mind, we still anticipate to put down 30 to 35 just to be on the safe side.
I think that's a good point for anyone that's watching that's because then when you're doing the numbers, right, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, 20%, I got this down. Now it opens your eyes at 4 farms. And does the income, sometimes you do take the income, the farm income into account sometimes?
They'll take it on a scale. Like they won't use dollar for dollar. Like if you've got revenue, they won't allocate that as 5,000 of your income. They may take 50% of it or 60%, depending on which bank.
Got it. We do have one question here down below from Parm. He's asking, why do you think there is more inventory in Langley versus other cities?
There's just more ALR properties as a whole in Langley and smaller parcels versus even Abbotsford and Surrey. I know it's a pocket that falls within the middle, but there's just way more properties. Like we've got a database of almost every single farm from Richmond all the way to Chilliwack. And we keep track of how many smaller parcels there are. Langley by far has the most smaller pieces of land. And if you look at what's on the market, it's all that smaller stuff. It's all that 5 acre stuff. You try to do a search above 10 or 20 acres, you're still getting low inventory. It's just the smaller stuff you're getting higher inventory.
5 acres or less. That's kind of like more of the residential hobby farm you say. So if anyone's looking for a hobby farm, guys, listen to that right there. Langley's the place to be. Nav's the guy to call. So that's one thing out there. But number 2, regarding common mistakes, like there are a lot of people that are buying farms. What are common mistakes you see with people either buying or selling these homes? Like, what are common mistakes that they do? Especially when buying, when you're going there to buy a farm.
You know, for average, I think the some people, like I've noticed, especially people that are moving from residential to actually a farm with a house on it, you know, get a proper septic inspection. You do your basic home inspection. A lot of people are not familiar with wells, so you want to make sure you get a well test where you want to check it for quantity and quality. So what they'll do is they'll check the gallons per minute for how much water is actually coming out of there, and then you want to take a water sample to an actual company. Raj, you probably heard of them.
EDS. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, there's so many of them. Yeah, it's good to kind of know what your services are and what type of contamination there may or may not be. Also grading, like you'll see a lot of the land that you go out there, you go on a nice day, and it's funny because I've been selling farms for so long, and you know, if I was ever going to buy a farm, I would never go and base it on a nice sunny day. The best time to see a farm, and especially that you're going to buy, is go on a heavy rainy day. You'll be able to find out you'll see the weakest spots of all that acreage because they'll just puddle up. Yeah. So you also want to check for drainage. Just kind of how do you drain that out? Is that a problem that can be solved? And you want to see what the ditching and everything is around that perimeter of that field, right?
So I'm catching a few points here. Well, septic, and the perimeter
drainage, and you know what? A lot of the easements and right-of-ways, you're more right-of-ways than you'll see from municipalities and things like that for access, for potentially maintenance of ditches and so forth. Not a big deal, but still something to be aware of on title. Wow.
And what about like, wow, that's actually a lot of information. I never thought of that. That's very important because if you don't have the right water, you don't have proper drainage, that can cost you like, like thousands.
Well, you know, you're looking at a brand new well, you're looking at almost 25 to 35,000. A new septic, you're looking at anywhere from 25 to 40,000. And you know what? Most people don't check a lot of these things just because they think, oh, you know, there's a family that's lived here before, everything must be fine. But you know, some families that will tolerate certain water conditions and some just won't.
Yes, filtration systems are needed because if you got the wrong stuff, I've been doing some of these, and testing the water is mandatory. I noticed one person mentioned something about taxes. We've heard, you know, if you buy a farm, there's lots of like, you don't pay tax, that's out there. Can you give a little bit more like basic insight regarding farms and taxes?
Yeah. So like if you're, it's still, everything majority still applies. Property transfer tax will still apply when you purchase a farm. You do, as long as you on a farm that's over 2 acres, if you prove that you're farming about and producing about $2,500 of farming revenue, you can apply to BC assessment and get your property taxes reduced.
Okay. Now, is that a reduction quite a bit, or?
It's probably less than half sometimes. Probably even sometimes a quarter of what your original property taxes make.
Okay.
I've seen like a 50 farm only paying like $300 of property tax.
I want that property tax. I think that's another reason why people want to move farms.
Yeah, you know, the
nice house.
Yeah,
you got no tax, right?
Yeah. Well, the big savings really come is when you sell. So if you're a true bona fide legitimate farmer, when you sell a farm, each individual person, as long as they've been farming and showing farming income, each individual will be exempt $1 million each on the gain. So if you bought a farm for $2 million, farming for 2+ years, and you're showing that farming income, and your farm is now worth $4 million, you shelter $2 million. If there's 2 people on title, $2 million, the entire $2 million gain.
And you don't have to live there. This is just gonna be a farm that you purchase.
Farming, and now say if you were living there, another principal residence exemption, same as like you were a house, and they'll factor in 1.4 acres on the house. So that's a separate exemption on the side.
Oh.
And then there's another exemption, whereas if you sell a farm and buy another farm, you don't even have to use these exemptions, and you can use something called the rollover exemption.
Well, kind of like a mortgage that just rolls over, that they see that you sold this, bought
Yeah.
this.
You don't
It's a
pay,
wash.
don't pay the gain. You roll it over to the next property. You'll eventually have to pay it, but at least you
Yes.
can build your base. You can build your acreage. You can build your business without paying the tax now and reinvesting that into the land.
Beautiful.
So the tax savings significantly come when you sell, rather than when you buy, or while you're living there, the property taxes are a little bit lower, but the bulk of the savings come when you sell.
Okay, wow.
Yeah,
That's a lot of tax benefits, it seems like, going through farms.
Yeah, and I always recommend, like, if you're going to be buying a farm, before you even buy it, sit down with an accountant that specializes or is even knowledgeable. You want to know how to put that farm in what type of position. Do you want it under your personal name? Do you want it under a company?
Company name.
And what's your exit? What's your exit strategy? Is this your principal residence, or are you planning to have this is your first farm that you just want to get into and then eventually expand? You may want to put that in a corporation. You may split it in certain ways where it's beneficial for your principal residence and your business.
I think
So,
that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, what you just said.
yeah, because
Not even just with farms, even development property, future, they buy rentals, they don't make it, they forget about taxes. Sometimes it's very important to put that tax plan in place before. Yeah, it costs money, but down the road, the tax savings, you'll be laughing. So
we do that with all of our buyers. The way when we set them up to buy something, the first thing we always ask is, before you write the contract, what name is it going under? We always ask them, like, what's the plan here? What's the exit? What's the situation here? And sometimes things change, but you want to be able to kind of have some sort of vision. And most people do, like most people will say, hey, I want to build my house here, or my primary focus is getting this my farming operation off the ground, and then I'll build, or I'll think about building. But they've always got a primary goal, and with a good account, always set it.
And it seems like there are multiple ways. There's a guy that wants a hobby farm, that wants to make the primary residence. Blueberry's not his main thing. He just wants to lease it out to somebody. Number two, there might be a guy that's actual farmer. He wants to grow the business. So yeah, like what you're saying, I totally understand. It makes total sense. That's why having a guy that knows farms it really matters, because putting that pieces to the puzzle together is very important.
Yeah. The biggest things.
Any other points?
Yeah, well, what we're seeing right now in our industry is that your traditional farming is starting to change. It's not just your ground crops that people are just growing. You're going to start here in the next, like, 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to start seeing farming work. A lot of vertical farming is new technologies are coming in place where they're more productive on right. So the greenhouses is probably one of the fastest growing industries that in a very long time. Greenhouse properties were very tough to sell 10, 12 years ago. Now we've got a very large list of buyers, private plus public companies that are looking to buy big pieces of land, either to build or just buy something already existing so they can do conversions. So you're going to see a lot of more controlled farming rather than what you see on these ground crops that are not controlled by, it's always weather dependent, right?
Yeah. Are you going to see more companies, do you think, like large companies getting to the farming game? Because in the States, someone just mentioned this. I know the farming is a little bit different there, and it's big corporations that run the farming there. Unlike, I think we still have a lot of small-time farmers that are working and building our BC Canadian farms.
Well, I think we're already seeing that. We're seeing big public companies coming in and buying big pieces of land to grow food. And they're not doing it the traditional way. They're doing it in very aggressive, like in warehouse buildings. They may not even be ALR properties. They may be going to Ontario. Like, if the unrestricted issue here in BC is that if the ALR doesn't change how they see farming, you're going to see a lot of these companies, a lot of these even these bigger companies want to farm. They're gonna go to Alberta. You can buy thousands of acres for industrial acreage. You can buy dirt cheap there. even in Saskatchewan. You're going to start seeing a lot of these companies because everything's temperature controlled. It doesn't matter how much sunlight you have there at that point, right?
Wow, especially if it's controlled.
Yeah.
And you're seeing we're going vertical now. I remember seeing this on TV and people are talking about it like a few years ago, but I never thought that this was going to become a reality. But it seems like that is the new way. That's the way things are going to be. And what about the marijuana? You know, we see all these weed facilities popping up in where the farms used to be, and now they're farming marijuana. How do you see that play out? Just on a side note.
Well, that's actually, and that's not even a side note. It's fact. You'll go drive into some of these farm areas in the last like 5-6 years, and we've worked with a lot of the bigger cannabis companies. We've sold them a lot of acreage, but you know, a lot of them did not survive. We've already, in the last, I would say, last 2 years, we've been getting calls because a lot of these people want to start shutting these down. They're not profitable, so you're getting.
I think too many open up.
Sorry.
I think there are too many opened up at the same time.
Well, I think what happened was on that industry, the federal government and the provincial and the municipal governments never issued enough dispensary licenses. So you can grow all the product you want, but if you don't have an exit for it, it's just going to stockpile.
Where are they going to sell it if they're not? Yeah.
Where you can
not enough retail fronts.
Yeah.
There's no point.
Yeah.
The overproduction, not enough sales centers.
Yeah. So what you're going to see, what we're seeing is a lot of the companies that did thrive, I would say maybe 90% wiped out, but there's always that 10% that are going to weather the storm and then be very, very successful. It's like anything.
Just like realtors.
Realtors, yeah.
Sorry, I had to do the jab out there. Yeah. But all jokes aside, one more question. I got this question. When they're building these farmhouses, dude, what I'm noticing is it's not a simple build. You have to preload the property. It stays there for a year or 2 years. Can you explain just this one little snippet, and then we'll end off on a classic note here?
Well, anytime you see big piles of dirt when you're driving through farmland, that's typically called a preload. They will put the dirt there, and they will let it settle over a year to 2 year period, depending on the soil conditions. And that process, you know, that can be a lengthy plus a costly process, and that's why that's mostly in floodplain zoning. If you're out of floodplain, you don't have to do any of that. Again, a lot of I would say maybe 50% of Surrey is out of floodplain. Majority of Langley, Abbotsford is out of floodplain, depending on which pockets you are in. And there's some pockets in obviously Abbotsford and small pocket in Langley that you are in floodplain. And preloading, yes, it is. It's not challenging. It's just it's if you're planning to build a house within a certain period of time, like quickly, don't buy in floodplain. Buy out of floodplain. You can put the permitting is the same as applying to the city to build a house on an empty lot.
Got it. So that's I think that's a big one, because whenever I drive through the farms in Surrey by 152, I've seen these piles of dirt.
Yeah.
Reloading, and I think a lot of the people that aren't used to farms, I think that's a very important thing that they need to know. Floodplain, not floodplain. Yeah. One more thing, we had a question here, guys. By the way, if you have any final questions, please drop them down below right now. But we have this one question. It says by Parm again. Have you seen any flower greenhouses switch to wheat plants?
Yes, we've actually sold a few to those companies. But again, a lot of them did not become successful, and they're shutting them down, and now they're looking for potential vegetable guys to buy it again. And they're not selling for the price that they bought it at. You know, at that price, there was like a gold rush to buy greenhouse properties to be first to market. A lot of these public trading companies were funded. They had hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and they were buying up a lot of greenhouses. Looking back, they dumped a lot of money to do the conversion, and they're built strictly for cannabis. And those companies now, no cannabis company wants to buy it. So all that retrofit of like tens of 20s of millions of dollars is going to go down the drain. And a guy that's going to buy it's going to have to buy it at maybe 50 or 60 cents on the dollar.
Wow.
We convert it now to a vegetable.
So, There you go. Back online here. I don't know what happened. But before we jet here, Nav, how can we get a hold of you? I know when I come to farms, you're my go-to guy that I call.
Yeah.
So how can these guys get a hold of you? What's the best way?
You can give me a call on my cell, 604-782-0988, or you can email me at nav@farmsinbc.com.
Farms in BC, folks. Nav's the man. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks,
any
Raj.
final thoughts, Nav? We're good to go. I think you shared a lot of information. Thank you very much. Take care, guys. Thank you.